Hi, I'm Dr. Babe, and this is Lovelife. Today we're talking about Is Marriage Dead? It's a part 2 of a series on modern dating and relationships. And I'm welcoming back Todd Hazelwood and Natasha Casebolt. You guys did so great last time, I thought we'd just keep you on.
Perfect.
Great.
So we're going to keep talking about sort of extending this topic into specifically is marriage dead? And the reason why I wanted to talk about that, I think it's important, especially in my line of work, but just from the modern idea of relationships and if marriage really fits into that and all of the different topics that we spoke about last time. There's this clip, this video clip. It's about 4.5 minutes. If you want to go ahead and look it up. I think it's a really interesting portrayal of what marriage is supposed to be like traditionally. And basically in this video, what they explain is that marriage is a self-imposed prison, which I thought was interesting because they were actually saying it was a good thing because it helps you control your impulses in a way that you're tethered to your partner, to your spouse, so you don't sort of fall prey to those natural human impulses and break the marriage vows. What do you think about that? Does that sound like a good thing to you, or what's your take?
I don't agree with that statement, only because I feel like marriage probably is pretty dead. I don't think people take it as sacred as it used to be. So I believe that even when people are married, they're not going to restrain their sexual impulses or their other desires because they have a wife, girlfriend. To them, it's all the same thing. If they're going to be that kind of person, they're going to be that kind of person. I think back in the day, marriage obviously existed for other reasons than it does today. I think every relationship is probably different. I think a lot of the times marriage is there for financial protection, legalities, that type of thing, protection of assets, that type of stuff, which is a shame. It shouldn't be like that. But if there is no common law marriage or anything like that, there's a little bit of pressure to do that. But I think these days it's not as sacred or valuable or a necessity like it used to be, for sure.
I think you used a very interesting term there when you said natural human impulses. Does that mean that marriage is unnatural? Is it man-made? Is it something that we should be doing? These are good questions. It's obviously an institution that's been around for a long time. It means different things to different people. Like Natasha said, centuries ago it could be to bond two families together for power reasons, and nowadays it's meant to be for love, and some people have a vision of it and that's what they want their whole lives. But you see a lot of divorce because people get into it and it's not what they had hoped it would be, and it ends up causing a lot of pain in people's lives.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, we do see that there's a lot of divorce and separations happening, but I still see a lot of marriages happening. Why do you think that is? Like, people are still sort of having this fantasy idea that marriage is a happily ever after, as well as simultaneously to this divorce rate sort of skyrocketing?
I think it's a carry-on from past generations. I think everyone was told, this is what you do in life. This is society says you get married, you have kids, you do X, Y, and Z. You can do whatever you want. It's your life. But people are still doing it because it's still something that is being taught to them is what they are supposed to do.
Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, just these days and age, like you see a lot of families, people who have kids together and are together 30 years and are never married, but they still have a family and they still have a good relationship. And I feel like sometimes this pressure to get married or it's too much and it's unnecessary. If you can it shouldn't dictate your relationship. If you have a good relationship, you don't need a piece of paper or an agreement to make it official.
It's just a legality at that point.
It's just a legality. Yeah. But, I guess it's just how you're raised, or I think
it's important to some
changing,
people. Yeah, it's important to some people that they want to have this. It's even if it is no different from the day that you were living together in a relationship and you had kids to the next day when you got a piece of paper that says you have the same last name. It may be no different in the relationship, but for some people, internally in what they want in their lives, it means something. And that's important to a lot of people, and that's probably why people are still doing it.
I do have to say, though, on this island, it does make things kind of difficult to endure a long-term relationship for, per se, an expat and a Caymanian, because we do have this rollover policy, and you can't just continue to live your life. And their answer to everything is get married, and it shouldn't have to be like that. I think that applies a lot of pressure living on this island, for sure, because it definitely restricts you in what you can do or how you can live your life.
I believe that now the law does recognize some domestic partnerships, but I'm not sure in relation to what department or law that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think just socially, domestic partnerships are becoming more visible. I don't know if they're more popular. They might have always been around, but now I think people are, or maybe we're more aware of them. And they can be more successful. And I'm wondering why. And then I'm thinking about that video, and that probably is contrary to what the theory was on this video, but domestic partnerships not having that sort of pressure and still working. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's interesting because, I mean, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, that domestic partnership reminds me of the success that you can have with that relationship. I mean, they've been together for so long.
I feel like that maybe sometimes with, when you are married, maybe it keeps you guys together because you have that fear that you feel like you can't leave. I feel like maybe if it's just a domestic partnership, you have to work harder because you know that other person might just leave you. And maybe it keeps everybody super honest rather than
and don't get complacent, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it makes you. I feel like maybe that's actually maybe even more healthy because you have to work at it because it is easy just to turn around and walk away. As we're married, you feel like it's like slapping, some cuffs on somebody and being like you're not going anywhere,
Sure, like the self-imposed prison that
Exactly.
they're talking about. And, not taking it for granted, the relationship, not taking the person for granted, not getting complacent, and really choosing your partner each and every day is something that is so important in long-term relationships and partnerships. And I wish that a lot of married couples would do the same thing. But unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of people who are married, they don't do the same thing. They don't, wake up each day and look at their partner and appreciate what they have and work at it. They just take it for granted and they sort of disengage from the whole process and they continue to live their lives separately.
Yep.
And I think that's usually the demise of the relationship. Even if they stay together, it's not a happy one.
Yeah.
But maybe kids and money and all that sort of stuff keeps them together. But yeah, I mean, isn't the whole point of being with someone, finding your happiness and being in love and it adding to your life, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just sort of ticking a box.
And you see a lot of different types of relationships as well. You see people that were married and had kids, and then they can separate and live their own lives with a child that they share, yet they have their own separate lives that they live and maybe move on to better relationships. And the purpose of the previous relationship was to have a kid, and now they've moved on. Yeah.
Perfect, yeah.
And maybe some people do get married to have kids, that they feel like having children requires that marriage.
Yeah.
But you make a good point about locally, like some of the difficulties with different cultures.
Yeah.
So Todd, Natasha, will just hold that thought and we'll be right back. Stay tuned and don't go away.